right. We'll give it just about a minute or so more. And once that hits about, oh, there we go. Hit a minute past. We'll get things started. Won't waste anybody's time here. We know everybody's excited to get some of these questions answered and hear from Zach tonight. So first couple things we want to cover in terms of housekeeping. Just want to make sure everybody in terms of iOS users know that 5.0 is out. So there are some awesome new features on there. We've got some great in-app tutorials, so definitely check that out. Make sure you've got your app up to date. Android users, we will be covering that a little bit briefly tonight on kind of when the timeline of that is looking like. So make sure iOS users that you've got the most up-to-date app, some really awesome new features and tools on there. So without further ado, like I said, not too much housekeeping tonight. I want to introduce our founder and CEO, Zachary Pope. Thank you so much, Zach, for joining us tonight. Everybody's super excited to jump into these questions, hear from you a little bit more, get to know you a little bit. So Zach, I'll let you take it away and quickly introduce yourself before we get into the questions here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Matt, how's the sound? Can you hear me pretty good?
Sure can.
Perfect. So I'll do like a little 3-minute kind of intro on kind of myself, my background, how I got into fly fishing and the Trout Routes project. And then we'll do quite a few questions here, some of which I admit I have seen ahead of time, some of which are going to be live. So cheating a little bit here, but so I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Most of our team actually is in the Midwest here, based in Minnesota or around. My technical background is engineering. I have an MBA from the University of Minnesota. Most of my career, if anyone cares, is actually in medical devices, so a little bit very different space. But really, my personal passion has always been, really being in the outdoors. And I started fly fishing, I think when I was like 17 or 16. And, the brief story is I basically found I think it was a fly rod. It was like a very, very stiff bamboo fly rod in my grandpa's garage. And I've never met my grandpa. So I just was really curious when I was like 16, 17, picked it up. And I was the type to be a little bit kind of intimidated by the concept of fly fishing. So I got into it and really tried to learn how to do it on my own. And it took me a very, very, very long time. And I'm still very much learning. So I got into fly fishing. And I think one of the things I found out pretty early on was that there's a lot to it. And one of the hardest things is kind of knowing kind of where to go, really kind of navigating yourself around the outdoors. And I kind of leveraged my kind of entrepreneurship and engineering a little bit to kind of sort through that solution, really just for myself to get started. And around 2018 is when we actually started the Trout Routes project. And a lot of people actually don't know that the origin of Trout Routes was initially to do essentially low-cost turbidity sensing. So turbidity, for those that don't know, it's basically a measurement of how clear the water is. And the initial thought there was to essentially take what we all use pretty often, which is the USGS stream flow graphs that we all use before we head out to a river, and to basically come up with a really low-cost way to install them in like every single river. And so did a bunch of testing. I actually built a pond in my backyard, horrible for house value, by the way. Did some testing, actually made a prototype, went to the USGS labs here in Minnesota, and they basically kicked me out and said, like, don't ever come back. This is a terrible prototype. And then I just switched to just doing maps. So that's honestly it's kind of how the project got started. That was in 2018. And in 2019, we launched our first kind of prototype. So, it's really just the high level concept is it's a navigational app for trout fishing, as you guys all know. So we did that in 2019. It was in the Midwest. And since then it's, the rest is kind of history. We now have almost national coverage. Many users, we have 5 employees. We have an office in Northeast Minneapolis. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Let's make this super informal. Let's have fun with it. And we'll try and do this more often. You guys can ask anything you want. So thanks, Matt, for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach, for the quick introduction there. We're going to start with some softballs here. So first question I'm going to throw your way is, what is your favorite or most used app within, or most used feature within the app?
The funny thing is, this is a softball and I don't even know how to answer it. I'm going to combine the first 2 questions, which is like, how do I often use the app? And honestly, like for me, there's 2 different use cases. One One is I'm in a new state and I'm there with family and I only have a couple of hours to get out there and just try to at least get my feet wet. And in that case, I'm really just like, I always tell people, like, I look for class one, maybe class two, and class zero if it's there. And then I look for like a access icon and I go there and I spend basically no time. I don't have to spend any time really doing any of the research because all my research is going to be based on once I'm actually in the water. And so I use trawl routes to just get there really quickly. And so I always just look for the high class and the access point. And if you just follow those two rules, I mean, you can save yourself hours and hours of either wasted driving or just looking for things that just aren't there. And so the idea is that we've kind of taken that hard work out of it for you. Um, and the other use case is if I'm actually in a place that I often fish and I'm pretty well oriented. So like here in the Driftless, for those that don't know, the Driftless is like this really cool area in basically Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. That's got a lot of really cool like coulees and all spring fed, mostly spring fed creeks. And I know that area pretty well, but one of the more common and kind of high profile places to go here is where there's a designated fishing access, fishing easement, I should say. And we have a feature in trawl routes that I use most often, which is like the access layer, where it color codes every eased section of a trout stream of the country in purple. And I use that. That's a very, very powerful feature if you know what you're kind of looking for. And I use that probably second most, depending on what I'm doing.
Right on. Awesome. So that kind of feeds into the next one I got for you. How often do you personally use the app itself?
Oh man, I used to use it when I fished. I have now 3 kids and a dog, and the work is quite busy, as you guys know. So, I probably fish once a month, I would say, but I actually use the app a lot because I really am passionate about how it works and how well it works. So like I'm one of the major, there's only 5 of us, but I'm one of the major users of like usability and all that kind of stuff. So I would say I use it, at least almost daily, honestly, just for from a testing perspective. And so yeah.
Right on. Awesome. Awesome. Well, all right. We are kind of done with the softballs, and we are now going to kind of dive into some of the other questions we got from people here through email and through Instagram today. And then I will trickle in some of the ones that we get here on the as they come in via Zoom. So please keep dropping those questions. Rob, thank you so much for already dropping that one in there. So all right, let's lead it away. So we had multiple people ask about when 5.0 is going to be, and those kind of combined features is going to be available on Android.
So the long version of this answer is when we built out kind of the company culture and the team, we were really passionate about building out a culture of people that were within the fly fishing space and in the community. We didn't I didn't want like a culture of people that are only doing coding and really have no idea what we're all about, what our mission is, what our values are. So what that actually means is we have like real people in the Twin Cities that are actually working on this project. They're full time, and me and Matt are one of or two of them. And so really what it comes down to is we basically have a very few amount of actual developers available. And then the other thing is that, honestly, 80% of our users are on iOS. So what it kind of comes down to is we do our best and we do a pretty good job of keeping those two up to date. There are some cases where we've actually put features first on Android. Most actually recently, we've actually upgraded the Android user interface ahead of iOS. In the case of 5.0, there are 2 or 3 features that is not available on Android or the web. And those are, there's a new River Miles tool that we just launched. That's pretty cool. Basically lets you like quickly analyze the distance of a river, and soon it'll be built out to have all kinds of cool elevation analysis and stuff. That is on iOS. It's not on Android. The other thing is Trout Lakes, which is a pretty cool new layer that we added. So, you basically turn that on and you can see points where there are known trout species in ponds or lakes across the country. And that's a very powerful feature. And then the third one is a really cool interactive tutorial that we've built out. That's, from what I can tell, honestly, like best in class tutorial style. And so it's a really nice feature to kind of orient yourself around what and how to use the app, because it can be kind of complicated. 400 words later, when is it going to be done? We're kind of thinking like Q1, Q2-ish. We're making a really big push to do a big sprint into iOS and make that really clean. And then we're going to take all of those learnings and throw that into Android. So I know that's a little bit of a delay. We're considering expediting some of the easier features like trout lakes, but we're kind of doing our best. I actually added on to this question, Matt, because many people ask about Android versus iOS, but there's also the web. And
Yep.
the web version that many people don't maybe not even know about, it's like a really nice desktop version where you can do notes and do markers, and it syncs to your phone, and it's nice, but it is also out of date. And so we are also working on getting 5.0 on the web, same time frame, Q1, Q2.
Awesome. Awesome. Next one, we'll continue here with the one that came in through email. Corky asked, if I mark a spot as fishing or parking or whatever, is he giving away his secret spots?
Yeah, so important to understand. The answer is no. We are really passionate and have made very specific decisions to make it so that there is no such thing as user generated content being shared on trout routes. So if you think about like social media, or sorry, but FishBrain or whatever, um, that is 100% not what we do. So we actually have a team of mapping analysts and curators that are going through and actually creating all those little fish icons that you see. Those are not from people, those are from us. So that's us looking through and in many cases hand curating where we believe there is designated access opportunities, and none of it is user generated. So everything is private. And I actually do like to sometimes, excuse me, tell the story of we have actually screwed this up before. Just because this is like an AMA and I want to be transparent over where we've kind of screwed it up. In the early days, we actually had, I mean, this is back when I was just me. We had this feature where you could, and if anyone is a trout routes user from 2019, you might remember this. There's a feature on iOS in the early days where you could take a marker and hit a button to make it public. And then with like that one button, that spot all of a sudden became everyone's spot. And I thought that was a really cool thing from an engineering perspective. And then I think within 2 weeks, very quickly realized like that's way backwards from like a conservation and from like a sustainability perspective, specifically for cold water fisheries, which is what our community is based on. So it's very private. It always will be that way. And we do our best, but we're not perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. Next one we have here from Mark. He has said he has a question about creating a marker. He watched one of our tech tip videos in the user guide, but his question goes a little bit deeper. He says, let's say I'm fishing a stream and I find a great spot where I'm catching fish, but I'm probably out of cell service and offline. He's wondering if there's a trick for pulling out his phone, opening the app and creating a marker on the fly when he might not know his exact location on the stream because he doesn't have service or whatever it might be. Is there nothing else that he can do other than try to remember where it is and then do it when he gets back online? Any tips or suggestions for that?
Yeah, so I actually use chart routes quite a bit offline. And there's like completely offline where you literally have no signal, and then there's like bad service type offline, and those are actually two different experiences I've kind of learned.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to remember that you should still have GPS signal even when you don't have cell service. So like let's say you go to a canyon on a trout stream and you don't have cell service, you should always still see your blue dot on the map. And if you have that area downloaded offline, you'll still see the details. So you can still create markers offline. You should be able to. And if you can't, you should email us because that's not correct. We're intending to design the app to be offline first, so that no matter what you do, if you have bad service or good service or offline, it should work. And I know that iOS and Android are both pretty strong with being offline. So my suggestion is to do indeed take that phone out when you're offline, when you're on the bank, for example. Like let's say I'm on a bend and I don't have cell service, I'll always take the phone out. I personally always long tap because it's really fast and easy and I'm lazy. I long tap to create a pin, and then now you can long tap to create a drop pin and hit create, and you're done. So it's like 2 steps, super fast. Long tap, create, done, and you can always edit the marker later or do whatever you want later. But it's pretty quick and easy nowadays.
Awesome. Next one, we'll jump into the list here that's been coming in on the Zoom tonight. Rob asked, he's curious about stream ratings or classifications. For example, in Missouri, the Department of Conservation has designated many blue ribbon trout streams. Trout Routes, though, lists many of these same streams as Class 1, Class 2, Class 3. How do we determine the classification for how they're listed within the app?
That's probably a number one asked question. So I'll try and be somewhat concise here, but the vision of the class system for trout routes is to help someone at a high level get oriented in an area as a starting point. So imagine you're new to Missouri or you're new to Montana or Wisconsin. Our rating system and our class, display system helps you quickly kind of navigate around what we consider the kind of the top rated streams for the ones that are more marginal. And then it's kind of up to you to kind of get into the details and kind of start navigating and exploring after that. When it comes to the specifics around how we come up with the classes is going to differ from state to state. So for example, in the case of, I'm going to use Montana and then I'll talk about Missouri in a second. In the case of like Montana, where there's actually a pretty good amount of data available around fish species per mile in different streams, we'll use that as one indicator of many on what that class should be. And so, for example, we look at if it's available fish species, fish quantity species data. We'll look at how much of it's public. We'll look at how long it is, how well known it is. Typically, like well-known tailwaters are like really good, but they're very technical, so that's going to get a higher rating. In the case of Missouri, I actually did the class system in Missouri, and I think what we did is we looked at the ribbon rating of Missouri as one of several indicators. But if we looked further into it, which we always do when we do these ratings, and we found out that, yeah, it was, blue ribbon 5 years ago, but there's a fish kill or it's all private, so it's not really that useful, we'll kind of take a step and downgrade that. And so our thought or our methodology is to create a simple, quick perspective on the class system. And then when you tap into that stream, in the case of Missouri, you should still see, it's blue ribbon or it's green ribbon or white, whatever the case is in that state. You should still see that in the case of Missouri. So I hope that kind of answers it. It's always kind of the subjective thing, and it's a hard thing, but I do think it's important because it does help people quickly orient themselves in a new area. And it's not supposed to be perfect, but it is supposed to kind of give you a nice guideline.
Awesome. We'll continue here on with some of the questions from tonight. Clayton asked, where do you source the content and how can users trust it?
So similar to, there's actually a lot of apps that are out there that do like navigational type stuff for the outdoors. Onyx is obviously the main one. There's there's AllTrails, Strava, whatever else. And most of what we do is we take, hunt. In our case, there's I think it's up to like 530 different data sets, and we bring it all in and we synthesize it. And then we take a step further and we simplify it to make it easy for us as anglers to figure out it's a trout stream and it's public access. Now, when we synthesize it, we do strip out some information, so it can be hard to know, like, you say it's public land, but I don't know like who the actual owner is or whatever. And I know it's a separate question. But for us, I mean, we do a lot of hand curation, and we have a lot of actually pretty cool anecdotes of people using our data or our app to find public access. In this case, there's a couple of cases, but in this case, an easement that actually wasn't documented on the state website, but it was documented on a local county PDF. And in this case, the landowner had a run-in with this angler, and there was a dispute where an actual sheriff came in and got involved. I remember the story vividly. And they actually went back to Trout Routes to figure out where this information came from, and actually found out that it was correct at the end of the day. So I mean, we consider ourselves pretty darn accurate. How can you trust it? I mean, I think eventually what we might end up doing is adding more information to the actual parcels that we're saying is public. So right now, when you tap into a public parcel, it kind of is pretty generic. It just says like, hey, this is public land. In some cases, it'll say the park name or hey, there's a national park. But eventually, we might add a little bit more information to give you guys a little bit more confidence of what exactly is public. But I will tell you, there's a lot of really cool stories of people using our app to get public access, and it turns out to be much more accurate than people think.
Awesome. moving back to the questions that came in via email and Instagram, Tim asks, he said he'd like to be able to input coordinates, latitude, longitude, to navigate to that certain point. Is that possible? Is that in the works?
Yeah, this
What's
is a
the
really cool
status?
use case slash feature. Actually, you can do it on iOS. Um, I don't even know what the right syntax is, but there is a way that you can type in. I don't know if it's a comma or like you type in the lat comma long or something. I think it actually does work on iOS. I don't know if it's on Android or web. Um, Bigger point here though is that whatever the answer is, we need to make it more clear in the app, and we will do that. Great suggestion.
Right on. Continuing on with email and Instagram here. So this kind of ties into that question you were talking about earlier. Let me just double check here for Rob. What is the main difference, would you say, between a class 1 and a class 2 stream within the app?
Yeah, I mean, class 1 is going to be a section or a stream that we know is high quality, but I'm going to use the bunny ears, high quality. So it's a river that's going to have public access for sure. I don't actually think we have. I think one of our rules is we don't do class 1 if a river is completely private. It's something that has known, documented, good quality, fishing experience, whether it's whatever type of fishing experience for trout. And class 2 is something that he's either like close to or related to or has trout, but we don't have as much verification available as far as the quality, and or it might be more private, so there's less public access opportunities. It's all kind of predicated on the idea that you're not we don't rate something as if we don't assume that you have access to private land. We assume that it's predicated on you needing to get public access to that river. So that's a big input of that. So and that's when you go into the app, you'll see I believe when you click on the filters button in the app, next to the classes is a little eye icon. And when you tap on that, it'll give you kind of a little nice description of what is a class 1, class 2, 3, and 0. One thing I didn't touch on as much before, in 2021, we actually created the gold medal class level. So before it was just 3, 2, 1. And then when we added Colorado in the West and the Rockies, we actually added a blue ribbon / gold medal class, just because we know that there are the top, 100 or whatever rivers in the country that are, considered either by the state or by the DNR or by whatever to be gold medal / blue ribbon. So this would be like the Colorado. I think Michigan's got some, or they did 20 years ago. Montana, and a few others that are across the country. So gold medal, blue ribbon are typically only available for those states that actually designate it for whatever reason that they come up with.
Awesome. Thank you for that one, Zach. Moving on, Michael asked, he said, how accurate are your maps? I was fishing a river in Colorado last week, and the owner had a no trespassing sign posted on the South River bank that he's evidently owned for years. And the other side of the river was indeed public. Trout routes, it looked like, had both sides of the river as public. What would be the right answer there, and how could he kind of decipher that situation?
Yeah, probably a similar thing. One thing that we've noticed is that how our mapping UI works is that any section of a trout stream that has public access on either side of the bank is going to have a thick gray outline on that trout stream. And we've seen that some people think that when they see that, they interpret it as both sides of the bank having public access. But the right answer is when you see a trout stream in trout routes having a thick gray outline indicating public access, you need to take a step further to figure out which side of the bank actually has public access. You look for that green parcel on either one of those sides, or an access point on either one of those sides. So in this case, I'm pretty sure, because actually we hand curated every parcel in Colorado. Even though Colorado is very tough, I'm pretty sure in this case, take extra care to look at the green parcels on either side of the bank.
Awesome. Next one, we'll continue on with that list here. We got a lot to make our way through. Michael asked, other apps show the property owner when it comes to private property. Is there an overlay in trout routes where he can see that currently, or is that in the works? What's the status on that?
Yeah, in the early days of, I mean, even now, like for most of the angling use cases that we are thinking through, it's usually people that are generally just looking for public access to a river. And so the edge case that we think about and would love to do eventually is being aware of who owns what parcel. And so in the case where you want to, knock on a door or try to get, a handshake agreement or get private access to a river, knowing who the owner of that parcel is very helpful. Right now, there is not that feature, and it is something that's on our radar. We don't have any commitment on when that would be, but we try to make it very simple by just having a simple color scheme system on what's public and what's not for now.
Awesome. Moving back over to the questions coming in live here, Ken asked that he's noticed a few new push notifications from us here at Trout Routes. How do we envision using push notifications moving forward to better help the user experience and maybe even catching more fish?
Yeah, we're also exploring how to make that very, very useful. I can give you a couple of use cases as an example. The first is so here in Minnesota, like we just finished, we have a pretty confined season. Actually, it's pretty open, but there's a season that ends partially September 15th, partially October 15th, and then it kind of closes. And then you hop over to Wisconsin, it's got their own season. One of the helpful things that I think would come out of the push and the in-app messaging could be where the user has indicated interest in a region, and we send them alerts and content that informs them of when seasonal closures actually occur. And that could be planned closures, like in the case of Minnesota, or it could be unplanned closures, like the state, in the case of like Hudal rules in Montana. So the idea, very, very much, is to drive value to the angler by informing them on things that they might not know, and that could be things around them, like closures. The other use case is we're starting to learn that there is a lot of what we consider like value and features in trout routes that it seems like most people actually don't know. And so what we're trying to do is leverage push or in-app as a way to engage the user to help them understand all these different bells and whistles that are actually part of the app. We're very, very sensitive to like not being another app that pushes stuff. We're just trying to figure out how to drive value to the actual angler. So yeah, we did very much just start a new project to try and figure this stuff out. So that's actually kind of cool that you said that.
Awesome. Continuing on with the questions here, David asks, is there any way to import GPX data like a track while waiting or logging a catch on a Garmin watch?
That's an awesome question. There is a import feature that's very cool on the web version of Trout Routes. So if you don't know, Matt, do you know if we have a how-to video on imports? I can't remember.
We don't have a specific how-to video, but it is, if you go back, David, just a couple master classes, if you go to our YouTube, not in the streamer one, but in the kind of summer roundup one that we did with some of the other team members, Jeremy, our GIS specialist, he did jump into importing data. So kind of scrub through that video on YouTube and you'll be able to find all the information on how to import all that kind of data.
One really cool example that I do sometimes at like fly fishing shows is I use Google Maps a ton. Actually, still a little bit today, unfortunately. We're trying to get me away from that. But one of the things that I do is I export all of my stars on Google Maps into like a I think it's a JSON format. And then I can import that into Trout Routes using the web app. And all of a sudden, all of my stars, all my favorites appear on Trout Routes. And you can do the same thing for lines as well as polygons. And so there's some, there's some pretty powerful import concepts in the web app version. It's under open the web app. It's maps.trouts.com. Go to my profile on the left tab. And then under my profile, there's a little import button and go from there.
Yep. Again, David, definitely check out that 2 master classes ago. Scrub on in somewhere in the middle there. Jeremy jumps in and explains that whole import process. So, all right, jumping back over to our email and Instagram questions here. Bill asked, he said he clicks on a parking spot that's listed next to a stream. When he clicks on it, how does he know what stream that's for? The information on that pop-up doesn't include what stream it's on. Is there something in the software that does that, or how can is he looking at it perhaps a wrong way? How would he be able to tell what stream a certain access marker is for?
That's an awesome idea, and I'm going to steal that idea, and it's going to be a feature in the next couple of weeks, probably.
Boom. How about that, Bill? Hopefully that's a great answer for you.
It's a great idea. This is why I just love having these kinds of conversations at fly fishing shows or like this, because our goal is to be very ingrained in like, we're anglers, you're anglers, let's build something together kind of a thing. So here's a case where we didn't think of it, you did. It's a great idea, let's do it. And it's honestly probably going to be done pretty soon.
Awesome. All right. So this one gets a little bit into it a little bit more, kind of into the thick of things. So we've got some questions about subscriptions and subscription options, things like that. So to answer a couple users' questions here, we'll start out with why did we raise the subscription rate this past year?
Yeah, little history. So for those that don't know, we started the app in 2019. It was free. The long-term vision was to build out a product and a community that showed that they cared about the product, and then we would try to make it into a sustainable project business that would be similar to like an Onyx or an All Trails for trout fishing. At the time that we started the subscriptions, it was $40 for a year. And the model that we have is there's no monthlies. It's very simple. It's $40 a year, and you get access to everything that we have. So super simple. And at the time, I think it was 2020, and at the time we had, I think it was, I want to say it was like uh 15 states or something, and not a ton of features. And fast forward to 2023, we have 3 times the features and 3 times the states. And
Mm-hmm.
we also have 5 employees versus just me kind of solo doing it. So as part of the long-term vision of expanding how we provide value to the angler and how we're building out the project, we felt that it was justifiable to increase the price to help us build out this product in the way that we kind of visualize it. There's still a lot of ambition that we have for what we're going to do. Um, the other thing is that we did consider a lot of stuff, but one of the things that we wanted to do was to not do what I see a lot of consumer companies do, which is like 10% here, 10% here, like 10% every 6 months forever. I didn't want to do that. I want to just kind of be blunt and just be like, here it is. We think it's not worth $40 anymore. We think it's worth quite a bit more. And so we just wanted to like cut to the chase and just do it, so we didn't have to do it again. So it was a fairly aggressive price increase from 40 to 58. I think I saw in the question, I think it's like a 50% increase. So, I mean, it's an aggressive increase. And the justification there is like, we added 3 times the features, 3 times the states. So in my mind, it felt like very much so, like a made sense. I will say though that in that question, I think it was actually from an angler that does not travel state to state very often. So I can imagine like if for those of you that are only really fishing in your backyard, you might not have felt like there was the value add to justify that price increase at the time. And so it kind of leads into the other question, which is like, okay, fine, if the national plan is going to go up to 60, can we at least have a smaller state plan or something like that? And I mean, the answer for that is we're considering it. We definitely want to do something where there's a lower price point for a smaller state or region. I don't have an answer for when that would be, but it's definitely something that we would love to do eventually.
Awesome. We will pop back here into the questions coming in tonight. Kenny's got one. If I share location with someone on my trout routes, do they need to have trout routes also?
Yes. So when
Awesome.
you, yeah, yes.
Pretty easy one for sure. So wanted to get that one out of the way, and then we'll jump back in
Can
to
I,
kind of subscription options. Go ahead,
can
Zach.
I,
Yeah.
yeah. So like when you, like, let's say that there is a share button, and just be clear, going back to the private thing, let's say you have a marker and you want to share, or let's say you want to meet at a parking lot with your buddy, and you can actually, press and hold a point and hit share. And that just lets you text your buddy what that spot is. It doesn't actually bring in any of your data or anything else, just like that actual pin. And what that does for someone that doesn't have trout routes is it kind of requires them or encourages them to download the app. And as a reminder, we always have had a free plan of trout routes, which actually does have a lot of value. And when you share, it does require them to have trout routes, but all they have to do is create the account and they don't have to pay for anything. So just keep that in mind that it doesn't require them to pay anything. It just requires them to have the app.
Awesome. Jumping back into subscription options. So we had Jim looking to find out if we've considered offering smaller membership programs, for example, state by state or maybe regional, things within that realm.
Yeah, I would just kind of go back to like step one was to figure out if we had a product that had enough value where we could have any sort of subscription, which was 2020 when we did $40 a year. We then kind of built out the product so that it actually is national. And now we're trying to create this vision where there's a flexible pricing option based on what kind of fishing you do. And the first step was to just simply raise the price for the national plan. But not long after, we're starting to think through, if we're going to raise the national price, how can we start creating these lower price points around states or regions? So again, another option would be a monthly option, right? If you're only going to go out to Montana for a week, you don't need a year of trout routes. So we are looking at and have played around with monthlies, and soon, hopefully next year, we'll experiment with regionals and state-based plans.
Awesome. Moving back over again to the questions coming in tonight. Sam asked, are there any plans to expand into saltwater or urban areas just in terms of fly fishing? I know Trout Routes is focused on trout, obviously, he says, but any plans to cater to any other categories of fly fishers out there? I know we were going to touch on this a little bit at the end of the class, but it looks like Sam's beating us to the punch and wants to know now.
Yeah, one of the running jokes in our office is, when is Zach going to run off and create salt routes, is what we called it. Just because I've recently got into salt fly fishing a little bit, and it's just super fun. I've always envisioned kind of doing different variants of trout routes. And so it's definitely something we think about, right? There's warm water, there's rivers, there's lakes, there's salt. There's a lot of different little verticals that we could kind of dabble into. I think right now the most that we're going to probably extend ourselves into is going to be the migratory stuff. So there are some states that we cover migratory pretty darn well. Let's say like the West Coast, Pennsylvania, New York's pretty good.
We just added Steelhead Alley a few weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. We just added Steelhead Alley, but I think there's a lot of cases where the use case around a tributary fishing use case is actually quite a bit different than like inland trout, where it's kind of there all year. And so we do want to tackle that a little bit, but we're really like passionate and ambitious about more things that we want to do within the core trout routes thing. So building out like resources, access laws, links for URLs, phone. I mean, we want this to be the most possible value for the inland trout angler or the tributary. And so we debate this often. I don't know that we're going to get really into warm water rivers or even salt anytime soon. If it is, it's going to be on my own time on a weekend, which I don't really have time for. So I love the idea. Probably won't do it anytime soon.
Awesome. Kind of into the kind of possibilities of what we're looking at doing. David has got a question here. He's looking to see if we're considering adding Alaska. He said he frequents the Anchorage area every 2 years and he looks to fish the Kenai.
Yeah, we are very much their Alaska will be very much included at some point next year. What we're envisioning is adding it before you need it next year. And my understanding is that the Alaska season isn't really even a thing until probably like April, May, is what I'm understanding. So like we're actually thinking about having that available before anyone really needs it for next year, actually. So and by the way, there is another state that we don't have, and it's Hawaii. And I do believe there are 3 stocked trout streams in Hawaii. Last time I checked.
I swear that one would probably take our team about 15 minutes, eh?
Yeah. I have not actually been to Hawaii, but
Awesome. All right, let's jump back over into the email questions here. We've got one from Philip. He said he's been using the app for a couple years now, and he's noticed himself getting a little bit frustrated trying to find previously saved streams or custom markers. Is there any plans to, within this next year, to update the saved data file structure to allow a user to create a folder hierarchy or just some sort of organization to that?
I love this question. This is actually one of my biggest gripes. I have like 150 pins, not that much, but it is enough to the point where it's pretty annoying and pretty like clumsy feeling to me, to be honest. And I have shapes and lines too, and those are even a little bit worse. And so one of the things, like just to kind of call out Onyx again, I think what they've done with their my content, strategy is actually really nice. I mean, they're very large compared to us, but I really like what they've done with their personalization structure, where you can have folders, you can have different color pins, you can have all kinds of different stuff. So what we're envisioning and very much part of next year is to very much upgrade the my content stuff. So you can do folder structures, you can do different color pins, you can maybe search, filter, sort, all that good stuff. All that will have a nice big upgrade at some point next year. Um, we actually just had a huge whiteboard session on this, Matt, 4 months ago, actually. So it's on
Yep,
our radar. We're very excited about all these things that we have in mind. We just got a lot of things to do.
that's the truth. A lot of exciting things to do, that's for sure, though. Awesome. We'll keep moving with the ones on the email here. It looks like we have made our way through the live questions. If anybody else does have some questions, please drop them in. We do have a couple more on the email side of things here, and then I want to hear. Make sure everybody knows kind of what the next 6 months for trout routes looks like. So we'll kind of end things on that. So next one here we've got is Zach. How do you feel that trout routes can or has already impacted the sport of fly fishing and or trout fishing in general?
Well, I mean, the vision is that we can make fly fishing more accessible through better access to information, and that sounds whatever it sounds, but it's very much true in that the goal of having a tool like trout routes is that it can encourage and enable someone to go out fishing in ways that they haven't before. So all of a sudden, if they want to go find an easement or stream around them because they're on a family trip, they now have a tool that tells them things that either would take them 4 hours to find out or they just couldn't find out at all. So my vision is that people are more encouraged and more excited about cold water resources and about the community. And so people get more involved, they get more participated, they get more integrated with the different resources, and they become more better advocates for what we all depend on, which is the cold water resource that we all use. So
Totally, totally. Awesome. Well, Zach, looks like we've got another one coming in from Sam here. Says he's got one last question for you. If you could pass on one message or initiative to the next generation of the fly fishing community, whether they are a trout routes user or not, what would that be?
that's a good one. I was going to say something around public access, but I actually would go back. I would be, I'll be honest. I feel like when I got into fly fishing, there was a lot of things that I just didn't know, and it wasn't that I like had bad intentions. It's just that I just didn't know. And I think there's a lot of people that get into fly fishing that might have, bad habits that us as experienced anglers would potentially judge or not like, or it wouldn't be in alignment with conservation. But there's just a lack of education. And so I think the thing that I would love to eventually have trout routes play a big role in is helping bring in these eager, hungry fly anglers, potential conservationists into the sport and help them become those long-term conservationists that we hope to all be. So like I'll just be specific. Even things around like in the driftless, I when I first got started had no idea what I was doing. Temperature meant nothing to me. Stepping on anything didn't mean anything to me. So like in August, I'll be fishing and doing gosh knows what and have no idea about the 65 temperature rule or whatever. And so I just think that there's a lot of things that I would like for us to do as a company to help educate the newcomers into the sport, because it's not that they have bad intentions or they're dumb or whatever. It's just that like no one's taught them. And honestly, it's a community that we have that hasn't been the best at like being inclusive. And I would like to do a better job of that and play a part in that.
Right on. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll wait a couple seconds here, see if any other questions. People are frivolously typing away to ask their last questions here. Otherwise, Zach, I do want to. Oh, there we go. We got one coming in. Eric asked, any chance that you would eventually connect with trout shops to update hatch reports and include those in the app some way?
Yeah. One of the reasons why we're not going to do warm water or salt is because there's so many things that we want to do within the core product, and we have five employees. One of many ideas is to have more comprehensive information about where you're going fishing. So right now, I think that there's a good amount of information on trout routes, right? You can know where the stream is. You typically know the regulations, what we rate it, where to go and all that good stuff. But it really doesn't say a lot about, like, if I'm going to the Madison River for the first time in Montana, I might not ever even know about half the hatches that go on there or about the salmon fly hatch or whatever. And so I think there's a lot more that we would like to do to get more contextual information. One of the ways to do that is by partnering with fly shops and bringing in what they have on their chalkboards into the app. Would be really, really cool. It's a very hard thing to pull off because there's about, I think there's like 1,140 fly shops that we know of in the US, the lower 48. And a lot of them are like pretty darn offline and pretty like, and that's what we like, right? We want a fly shop that doesn't have a lot of technology, ironically. But to bring that information, to bring in the partnerships of a fly shop into a centralized, app like we have is pretty hard. So we love the idea. We're looking into it. No commitments though.
Awesome. Awesome, Zach. Well, let's close out things with here. Let users know what trout routes, what they can expect the app to look like, feel like, what's trout routes going to look like in 6 months from now.
Yeah, I mean, so in the last 12 months, we have doubled the product coverage. So January of this year is when we went national for the first time, or lower 48, and that was a ton of work. And so what we've been working really hard on is taking what we think is a pretty darn good product and making it go national. And I think in that process, we had to make a lot of difficult choices about what not to do. And I think what we're left with today is a pretty good product that is still a little bit rough around the edges. And now that we have national coverage, we're going to be kind of going back and really trying to make everything feel and work super smoothly and super cleanly. And I know that doesn't sound super sexy, but even small questions like, can you create folders for my content? Or I want to create different colors for different pins, or I want to change an icon from a fish icon to a boat ramp icon, which you actually can't do to my knowledge in iOS right now. So just like basic stuff, I think we've skipped to get us to a national point. And now we need to go back and really just like make the best product that we can for trout for the lower 48. So in the next 6 months, I would expect like really nice improvements on how things work, usability, national coverage, including Alaska. We'll start covering things like migratory much better. And then just like general omni platform improvements like the web and the Android's gonna get nice updated. So kind of going back to what we kind of should have done pretty better job before on.
Right on. Awesome. Well, Zach, thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you everybody who joined us. We had a really awesome time. Zach, I don't know if you've got anything that you want to leave the people on, but I will give you the floor for the last couple minutes and we can close things out with that.
I think my last closing comment would be what drives us the most is having conversations with people. We love going to events. We love having events like this. We feel like we're one of you. We're one of our own users. And so we want to build something that we're all excited about, and we get the most value out of hearing from you guys, both positive and negative, whether it's, we love what you did here or we don't like the price increase here. We're all in this together and we love to kind of be on the same team, so to speak. So my main message is to stay engaged, keep the comments coming, email us left and right. We're always, basically me or Matt or one other person is going to get an email 24/7. And so we're just really excited to keep doing this and keep the engagement coming. And thanks so much for all the great questions tonight.
Awesome. All righty. Well, thank you everybody for your time, and we will hopefully catch you on the next masterclass.